Good evening, I'm Peter, a resident of Minas Gerais. I'm a subscriber of this channel and I always keep up with the posted videos. Although I enjoy the content, I've never come across anything related to the supernatural. While I believe in such phenomena, I prefer to observe them from a distance, as the curious always want to keep a safe distance from these creatures. Putting jokes aside, I'd like to share an experience of a childhood friend named Dom, whose real name is Douglas Borges. He no longer lives in Brazil and has been in the United States since the early 2000s after crossing the border from Mexico in search of better job opportunities and a better life for himself and his family. He currently resides in Boston. During his recent visit to Brazil, we discussed various topics, and that's when he recounted an experience he had with unknown or perhaps supernatural creatures during a vacation trip to Canada in 2012. He and his wife decided to rent a cabin in the Canadian mountains for a few days of relaxation. During their trip, my friend's car broke down while they were driving towards a city to the north. He had to stop and inspect the vehicle to identify the issue, and his wife got out of the car to stand beside him. Suddenly, she froze, staring at a spot in the forest that bordered the road. When my friend noticed this, he asked her what she was seeing, and she pointed towards the woods. However, he couldn't see anything unusual, only the trees. There were no people or animals in sight. My friend asked his wife what she was looking at, but she couldn't explain it clearly. She saw a very thin figure with disheveled hair, bowing its head. Luckily, the car was repaired, and they were able to leave the scene. Later, they arrived at the cabin where they were staying for a few days, which was a few kilometers away from where the car had broken down. After settling into the chalet for the night without incident, they decided to go for a hike along the mountain trails the next day. As they rested and enjoyed the scenery, the woman spotted the same creature she had seen the day before, and this time, her friend saw it too. They realized that the creature was further down the trail and appeared to be supernatural or from another world, which filled them with terror. To make matters worse, they had no firearms, so they quickly headed back to the chalet where they knew there was a weapon available. Once inside, one of them prepared to use the weapon while the other locked the door. Suddenly, they heard what sounded like human laughter coming from outside. Peering through one of the windows, they were able to get a close-up view of the creature. Its long, slender arms ended in sharp claws instead of nails, and it appeared to be adored by the earth. The creature ominously began raking its claws across their car, producing a piercing screech that echoed throughout the mountains. My friend aimed the gun at the creature, but hesitated to fire. When the creature realized it was being targeted, it exhibited surprisingly human-like intelligence and quickly fled the scene. Although they knew the weapon could potentially harm them, they opted not to flee the area entirely and instead stayed nearby, listening to the creature's footsteps as it prowled around the cabin. Unfortunately, they were in a region without cell phone reception and were unable to call for help. They remained inside the cabin, hoping that the creature would leave them alone. However, as time passed, they felt the creature's presence lingering outside. Knowing that the creature had the advantage since they were tired and had no control, my friend braced himself for an attack. Sometime after dark, the creature began a strategic assault on the cabin, throwing stones and sticks and attempting to force its way through the door with its immense strength. Despite being armed, my friend knew that they could still be killed if the creature managed to enter the cabin. Fortunately, there was a mezzanine in the hut where he and his wife sought refuge. They heard a loud noise and realized that the creature was attempting to break down the door. With the two of them hidden and out of reach, the creature began to wreak havoc on everything inside the cabin. My friend's wife became overwhelmed with despair, and at that moment, the creature managed to locate their whereabouts and attempted to reach them by any means possible. In a critical moment, my friend fired the gun, apparently hitting the creature. He fired again, but the second shot missed its target. Despite this, the creature appeared to be deterred and left the cabin, disappearing into the forest. Faced with the dilemma of whether to stay or leave, my friend and his wife were unsure whether this creature was alone or if there were others like it inhabiting the mountains in the area. With the night just beginning and several hours of uncertainty and anguish ahead of them, they decided to make a run for it. They quickly got into the car and started it up, luckily only finding damage to the bodywork of the vehicle. As the lighthouse shone its light, they became aware of being watched. Adjacent to the cottage, a creature gazed at them with eyes resembling those of a human, but its body was deformed and peculiar, possessing human-like characteristics. At that moment, my friend informed me that they were uncertain about what it was. Nevertheless, they were able to flee down the mountain, though the creature, which was exceedingly agile, pursued them. Fortunately, they reached the main highway and traveled to a nearby town. After spending the night there, they returned home. However, they suffered from psychological trauma and were plagued by nightmares of the creatures that had attacked them for an extended period. They were fortunate to have escaped alive, but they still don't know what or who attacked them. It could have been a supernatural creature, a genetic experiment hybrid, or even a being from another world. He is convinced that these creatures appear not only in Brazil but in other places as well. Had he not been careful, the creature would have undoubtedly found him, and he and his companion would have become just another missing Brazilian couple in the northern hemisphere. The authorities would have likely attributed their disappearance to bear or wolf attacks. Can you speculate on what type of creature could have been responsible for the attack that night?